All right, so last time we talked about wanting to start making a to-do app, but we didn't really get into that. So today we're going to dig right into it. We're going to create what's called an interface. So what you want to do is right-click on the components folder. This is where we had the input, checkbox, and button components from last time. So if you want to right-click there, say New File, and call it todo.ts. So an interface, export interface, to do. An interface is sort of like a contract between the writer of the interface and the consumer. So when we write the interface, we're going to add what types of properties that we want on this object. And for our to-do object, we want to have three properties. Done. This is a Boolean. So you can mark a to-do item as done or not. A description. And this will be a string. And we'll also have some sort of key so that we can retrieve specific to-do items later on. All right, that's all we have to do here, and you'll see how we can use that in our to-do page later on. Now, so in your page.belt, we're going to create a script, lang equals ts, and this is the page where we're going to start consuming our components. And the first component that we want to consume is the input component. So make sure it is imported from lib/input. So I will do that. And inside the input tag, this is what's going to be labeling it. So what we want to do is call it a new to-do. And we'll close off the tag there. Now, if you want to run the application, you should be able to see that this page will have a input on. Right. So right now it doesn't do anything. We haven't built any functionality into it. So let's look at how to do that. We're going to want to add a button as well. So let's import the button again from lib $lib, and it's going to have an on-click event. I don't think we have added that yet. Have we? We have. Okay, so that should work. So on click, we're going to have to do something. We're going to create an arrow function. So that's open parentheses, close, and then we're going to do a equal, greater than, and the function name, which is going to be called new item. All right. And up in the script tag again, we're going to create a new function called new item. Now, when we click the new item, we want to generate a new to-do from the interface. So let's take a look at how to do that. We also want to get the value from the input somehow. So open our input.svelte and add a couple of things. So here, this was the previous work, right? If you open the input.svelte file under components, we had a empty script tag before. So what we want to do here is expose some variables that we can then use to bind to our component. And the value that we want to expose is export let value. Okay, so the value we want to bind to the input. So that's what we're going to do, bind value. Oh, this is complaining because it wants some sort of type. So we're going to do string or number. Okay, so now you can put strings or numbers into this value input box, and we can then consume it from outside. We're going to bind it here as well. And now that this is saved and it's bound to the input, we can start using it like this. Bind value equals, and we're going to rename this to another variable so that it's less confusing. So right now it's complaining. We're going to create that variable because it does not exist yet. So I'll let description, and we can use a string here. All right. So now once you start typing, if you want to output description to debug, since these are bound, whatever you type into the input box should now come after this debug. Let's see if that works. Oh, we need to add something to that button. So let's take a look at if this input box works now. So, yep. So as you can see, once you start typing, it will output whatever you have bound there. All right. So now that we have this, we need to create the other variables somehow. So let to do, we're going to use a const here. Const to do is a object of to do. So this is how you consume that interface that we wrote earlier. And since, okay, we're going to need to import it to do, and then auto import. I'm going to hit enter. Okay, so that's imported now. And this is showing us an error because it is now missing some properties. And if you hover over it, it will tell you type object is missing the following properties from type to do, and it shows done, description, and key. Those are the three that we added earlier, so let's add those now. Done. So we're going to default our done to false. Description is our description variable. So we're going to do this and a key. Now we want to create a randomly generated key here. So for now, I'm going to add just the empty string, but we will add the unique ID generator. So let's take a look at doing that now. All right, so in your terminal, there should be a plus button. If you have your application running, you'll want to create a new terminal. And in the new terminal, we're going to install what's called npm install uuid. And for everything that you install with Svelte, it should be with -d. This is to save it to the dev dependencies. Nothing in Svelte needs to be saved as regular dependencies. So this is why you add the -d, but you don't have to worry too much about this. With or without the -d, it will work. So let's do that with -d. All right, that's installed, and we're going to then import it. Okay, import v4 from UUID. All right. It says I cannot find. Okay, so it looks like we want to install a secondary package called @types UUID. This is just to let TypeScript know that there is additional types available. All right, so we're going to do a npm I @types UUID. Okay, that's installed. And if we refresh the types, to do that, you want to do a Command-Shift-P or a Control-Shift-P on Windows and say svelte restart language server. Okay, and after that, it should be available. All right, so now we can replace the key with the v4 function. And this should now generate a new random string for our key. And if we want to see if that's working, you can do a console.log to do. We can just console log the whole object. And in our button, it wasn't showing any text, so we're going to add some text. Create to do. All right. So now if we go to our application and click the Create to Do button, you'll want to open the terminal first. So right-click, Inspect, and go to Console. And if you type something in here and click the To Do button, you should see that something is the description, and it will have a randomly generated string for the key field. All right. Next, we're going to look at working with the local storage system that will store all of our to-do items. All right. So I'm going to get rid of this debug, and we're going to create a list. Let to-dos equals, let to-dos of to-do array equals empty array. All right, and this will let the compiler know that this is specifically for a list of to-dos, and you can only ever put to-dos in this list. All right, so what we want to do here now is add this to-do to the list. And to do that, we're going to to-dos equals spread the to-dos, existing to-dos, and push the new to-do. So there's a lot to unpack here. This is what's called a spread operator. And what it does is it takes your existing to-dos and it spreads it out into its component items, so that if you had any, it would be recreated in this new array. It's just a different way of creating an array. It's just another way of creating an array, specifically if you have existing lists that you want to reuse. And we want to reuse the existing array and add our new one to it, so that when you create the next one, it will use the existing to do and add the new to do on top of it. Okay. And this still doesn't add anything to the local storage yet. So let's take a look at how to do that. I'm going to save the file, and next we're going to do local storage. So now that we have a key and a list and our new to-do item, we can start storing those things into local storage. And to do that, local storage requires a key, and that's what we're going to use this key field for. All right, so local storage dot set item, and it requires a key, so we're going to use to do dot key. That's not all. We need to also pass it something that we want to store, and we want to store this to do object, this new item. So to do that, we're going to pass it the to do, and it's not going to like it because it expects a string. And if you read this message, it says argument of type to do is not assignable to parameter of type string. So we need to convert it into a string somehow. And fortunately, we don't have to write our own conversion function. There is a thing called JSON.stringify that we can then use to convert this to a string. All right, so that's why we're doing that. And now this should create something in the local storage when we click this new item button. What we also want to do is start tracking our keys somehow. And this will come into use when we reload the application later on. We need to find out what to-dos we already have in this application. So let's create this keys array. And this will just be a string array. So we're going to do the same thing as we did before. And let's add it here. So keys equals the existing keys. So ... keys. And we're going to add the new key, to do .key. All right. So this will now create that string array and keep track of it for us for our new items. What we also want to do is update the local storage with that keys array, same as we did before. But here we're going to have to pass it some sort of key that tells us what we're looking for. And let's create a constant up here so that if we need to find this key again later on, we can reuse it without having to remember what it's called. So we're going to call this to do keys, and it's going to be a string. And here you want to create something sort of unique. So I'm going to call it to do -keys. It's not going to conflict with the ones that are generated here. And if you think you are going to conflict, you can add a little something different in front of it, or make it something that is very unique so that it won't ever clash with something else. The local storage will also be unique to your URL. So if you were to deploy the app as todos.com, it won't clash with something that is called todolist.com. Okay, so now we're going to use that to do const keys, and we're going to pass it the keys that were updated. And it's going to have the same issue we had before. It expects a string. So we just do the same thing here as we did before. So I'm going to select this word and cut it, json.stringify, and then paste it back. All right, so that should be everything we need in our new item function. So let's see if this functionality works. We want to display the results of our work. So to do that, we're going to use Svelte's template iteration. And how you use that is using s-each. Now this comes from the Svelte snippet extension. So if you don't have it, this is under, if you search Svelte and look for Svelte 3 snippets, that's how you get this autocomplete. So what you want is S3 each block. Actually, this doesn't have the else block, so I'm going to erase that and do a S each else block. Okay, so the first parameter in this each block is your array. So what we want to pass it is our to-dos. And you can see here that the snippet inserted a couple of comments. The first one is content here. So this is when the array is not empty. And the second one is an empty list. So when the list is empty, we want to put some sort of message here. So here we're going to say, you've completed all your tasks. Right? And in the first array, we want to show the user a list of their tasks. So the first thing we want to do is provide a div. This will break them up into lines. And inside it, for now, we're just going to do a to-do.description. Oh, sorry, this should be item.description. Okay, so the item is the individual items, and the to-do is the entire list of items. So let's save that for now, and application. And if you start adding to-dos, yes, and it will start showing up in your to-do list. Now, to look at the data structure that we've created, you'll have to go to, on Chrome, you'll want to go to application, and there should be a storage somewhere. And if you click on local storage, it will show you a list of items that we've created. For Firefox, I have to go to the storage tab, and there is a local storage here. And these are the items that I've added. Now, okay, so this is the app links to do keys that we saw earlier, and there is 2 items. This is a comma separated list, so there's 1 comma here, so that means there's 2 items in this list. There's a couple of other things that are in here when I did this previously, so you can ignore that. There is a to-do and a .next, so These are the ones that I just added. Now, if you refresh the application, this it doesn't show our previously added items. And that's because we haven't added a way of retrieving them yet. So let's take a look at how to do that. So to retrieve the previously stored keys, what we want to do is instead of a set item, we want to use a get item. And we want to do that when the component is created. So Svelte provides a way of detecting when a component is loaded, and that's called the on mount. All right, so once you've typed it, it should say import from Svelte. Just going to click enter. And this is a function, and it expects a callback inside. So inside the brackets, we're going to create another function. And this will be an arrow function. Okay. So this is the basics of an arrow function. You have the opening parentheses, and this equal greater than is the arrow. That's why we call it the arrow function. And then the function block is encompassed by these two curly braces, right? So go inside those curly braces and hit enter. And in here, we're going to do a get keys. All right, so we've created this keys object before, and we're going to retrieve it at this point via this local storage dot get keys, get item, and we're going to use the same key, the constant that we created earlier. And because it also retrieves a string, we're going to have to parse it because it is stored as a string. We have to parse the string. So it'll look something similar to the above. We need to do a JSON, but this time it's going to be a dot parse. All right. So now it will parse the string into an object. And in this case, it will be a string array. So if I do a console log here for the keys, we should see two items when we refresh the page. Okay, so I saved, and because the save triggers a reload, you can see that the two items are console logged out. Now, we need to use this keys array to retrieve the existing to-dos. So we also want to do a keys.map. Okay, so we're going to do a to-dos equals keys.map. Right, we're going to create an arrow function inside. A map operation is a transform. A transformation of one array into something else. So what I want to do is I want to convert this keys array into the to-dos array somehow. So what I want to do is pass in the key parameter. We're looping over the keys. So inside it's going to be an individual key. Right now we have two items. We're going to convert this into a return of another JSON.parse. Okay, JSON.parse. And we're going to use this key again to get the item. So local storage dot get item with a key as string, because it expects something to be available there. This just says to ignore the null. You don't really have to worry about that for now, but just copy this, and we're going to console log if our to-dos are indeed being retrieved. Okay, we save that, go back, and now I can see that our previous to-dos are being loaded again. Cool. And if I refresh the page, it takes a little time to retrieve it, but it does get retrieved. All right, so now we can apply this, apply the checkbox and a button to say delete an item. If you have something that is done, you can mark it as done. And if you are totally done and don't want to see it anymore, you can then delete. So we're going to create a couple of other functions here to say done item and delete item. All right. These need to be functions. So let's add the function keyword. I'm going to copy that and apply it down here. All right. So for each of the to-dos, we're going to, inside the div, button, and on click equals delete. I want an arrow function inside to say delete item. Now, I want to be able to tell which item I'm deleting. So here you want to pass it a items.key. Item.key, sorry, not items. And I just finished closing out the tag here. I put a delete inside so that you can tell that this is doing a deletion. And this is complaining because when we created the item function, delete item function, we did not specify a parameter. So we're going to do that now. We're going to call it key string, and now it should be good. And in here, we're going to do a filter. So we want to look for this key in our to-do list and our keys list, and then remove those from the arrays. Okay, so use the key parameter to look inside our keys and to-dos array to remove item. That's what we want to do. So keys.filter is what we want to do. But we also want to update our existing array. So we're going to say keys equals keys.filter. And we're going to add the, let's name this differently, so we don't have a clash with our function parameter. And it expects a return. So this is going to be a comparison of some sort. In a filter, it expects a comparison. What we want to do is say, if the key that was provided is not equal to the key here, found here, then return it. If it is equal to the key, so this filter is a loop. It will go through each of the keys. Let's explain this a different way. Filter loops through the keys array, and each key is then compared against our function parameter. All right, so if it is equal, if return key not equal underscore key. So what this tells the function to do, this filter function to do, is if the function parameter key is A and this keys list contains A, B, C, it will remove the A and return the B and the C. So let's think about how that will work. All right, so we're going through the list. It's giving us A for the first key, and it's A that was passed into the parameter. Well, it is equal to A, so it will not return here. Okay, so for the first one, A is not equal to A, is equal to A. So it will not return to the new array. And once it goes to the next one, it will use B. So B is not equal, so it will return, and so on and so forth. And that's how this filter works. All right. And we're going to do the same thing with the to-do list. To-dos equals to-dos dot filter. And we're going to return when key is not equal to the to-dos key dot key. So the same logic as above, but now we're reaching into the object itself. So this is looping over to the to-do items. And because we use TypeScript, it knows that there is a to-do key on this object. Okay? And if you try to type something else, it won't understand it because the three properties that we added to the to-do is just key, done, and description. So it won't understand this ID property. So it needs to be put back the key. All right. So now that we've updated our lists, we need to store the variables. We need to store these new arrays into our local storage again. All right. So you could probably you could copy this down into our delete function, and this would work. Ah, okay. So since we're doing a delete, we're not actually doing a set item anymore. We're doing a remove item for the to-do. Okay. So since the key is all we need for deleting, we're just going to remove this remove item, and that should work. And our to-do keys are then updated. This keys list is updated here, so we just need to set item again over here. So that should work now with our delete. And if we go and click delete our next, it's removed. If we refresh the page, it's only got the last one that we have.